You know how some stories just get stuck in your head? It could be a scene, a character, maybe just a feeling, but it just sticks with you. And then, years later, you find yourself trying to hunt it down, just needing to know what it was and why it mattered so much. Well, today, we're going to go on that search, not just for one story, but to figure out why all stories have such a powerful grip on us. And our journey kicks off where so many do these days, the internet. A user on Reddit's Horror Lit forum posts a question, hoping someone can help them find a story that's been haunting them. They remember the plot, the whole vibe, but the title, the author, totally gone. It's this really modern mystery, but it comes from a feeling that's, well, timeless. So here's the story they remembered. A guy gets an anonymous note, right? It tells him to go to this remote, totally abandoned train station after midnight. So he goes, and a train just appears, out of nowhere. He gets on, and as he's looking around, he starts recognizing people. But they're people he knows for a fact are dead. He realizes this isn't just any train. It's a one-way trip, and he's the only one who doesn't have a ticket. I mean, chilling, right? You can totally see why that would stick with someone. And success. After a little digging, the Reddit user finds it. The story's called The Train of Doom by Derek Hutchins. Case closed. But see, this is where our story really begins. Why do we go on these quests? What is it about a ghost story, or any story, that makes us need to find it again? What are we really searching for? That hunt for a story about a ghost train? It's about way more than just a spooky tale. It's a perfect window into this huge, fundamental human need we all have. The need to create stories around death and the people we've lost. And we tend to do this in two big ways: through the fiction we invent and the rituals we actually practice. So on one side, you've got literary grief. This is your horror stories, your dramas, your novels. Fiction is like a safe sandbox where we can play with and try to understand the total emotional chaos that death leaves behind. Then, on the other side, you have ritual remembrance. These are the structured, real-world things cultures do to honor the dead, like ancestor worship or funeral rites. One's in our imagination, the other's in our actions, but trust me, they're both ways of telling a story. And check this out. This quote comes from a study of Indian short stories, and it just nails what fiction can do. There's this one story about a daughter who is always fighting with her mom, but when her mother dies, she's completely transformed. The story uses this fictional death to show us how loss can literally reshape us, making us more responsible, more empathetic. It's just a really powerful look at grief's psychological punch. Okay, so let's jump from the fictional to the real world and see how this same impulse works there. This is Shraddha, a Hindu ritual of remembrance. And it's not just, hoping for peace in the afterlife. No, this is a detailed, specific set of actions designed to actively nourish and honor your ancestors. It's a story told not with words, but with offerings and actions. And you can see how structured it is. The ritual has these core acts: Tarpana, offering water; Pinda, offering rice balls to 3 specific generations: your parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents. And then feeding Brahmins, who essentially act as stand-ins for the ancestors. Every single step is like a chapter in this living story of connection, making that abstract bond between the living and the dead something real, something you can touch. So right, we tell stories to deal with death, but we also tell them to figure out life. Stories are the actual tools we use to build our own identities, especially when we're kind of caught between different worlds, between the past and the present. You want a perfect example of this? Look no further than the work of the legendary Indian author R.K. Narayan. What made his writing so incredible was his genius for taking these huge, ancient myths of India and weaving them into the normal, everyday lives of regular people. He had this amazing technique. He'd basically use an old myth as a blueprint for a modern character's life. So you'd have a character struggling with a totally contemporary problem, but their struggle would mirror an ancient epic. And by doing that, he showed how these old stories aren't just museum pieces. They're living, breathing forces that still shape who we are right now. And that feeling, that idea of being caught between two worlds, that is everything when it comes to the immigrant experience, or what you might hear called the diasporic story. Authors like Jhumpa Lahiri are masters at exploring this, that really complex, often painful emotional space when you're from one place, but you're living in another. This quote from an analysis of Lahiri's novel The Namesake is just, It's heartbreakingly perfect. It's about a character named Ashima who is giving birth in America. She's going through this universal, incredible moment, but the fact that it's happening without her family, without her whole cultural support system, it just fills it with this deep sense of isolation. It's a story all about how our identity gets forged when we're far from home. So how do they do it? How do storytellers make these huge experiences, grief, identity, being displaced, feel so real and powerful? How do they hook us so completely? Well, they have a secret weapon. Let's pull back the curtain and look at one of the most powerful tools in the storyteller's entire kit. It's called dramatic irony, and it's actually super simple. It's when we, the audience, know something important that a character in the story has no idea about. The classic example, Romeo and Juliet. We know Juliet isn't really dead, she just took a sleeping potion. But Romeo, he doesn't. And that gap in what we know and what he knows, that's where all the power comes from. I guarantee you know this feeling. Every single time you've watched a horror movie and you're screaming the killer is in the barn while the teenager just strolls right in, that's dramatic irony. It's the engine that drives suspense. That urge to yell at the screen, that's you actively participating in the tension the storyteller built for you. And it's usually built in 3 stages. First, preparation. The writer lets us in on the secret. Hey, Juliet's just taking a potion. Second, suspense. The character acts without knowing. Romeo shows up, thinks she's dead. And third, resolution. The truth comes out and the consequences hit, often tragically. Romeo dies, Juliet wakes up. It is a masterclass in manipulating information to get the biggest emotional gut punch possible. So here's the key takeaway. Dramatic irony isn't just some clever parlor trick. It totally changes our relationship with the story. We're not just watching anymore. We're insiders. We're given this privileged knowledge, and we're forced to watch helplessly as characters walk toward a fate that we can see plain as day, but they can't. It makes us care so much more. All right, let's bring this all home. We started with a forgotten ghost story, and from there we've gone through ancient rituals, classic books, and the actual nuts and bolts of how stories are made. So, what's the thread connecting all of it? Just think about the ground we've covered. We started with a Redditor looking for the Trine of Doom. That led us to the structured storytelling of the Shraddha ritual, then to how writers like Narayan and Lahiri use stories to figure out what it means to be alive today. We even took a peek inside the storyteller's toolbox to see how dramatic irony messes with our heads. And here's the bottom line. Our search for stories is really a search for connection. That Reddit user wasn't just looking for a scary story, they were trying to reconnect with a feeling, a memory, a piece of who they used to be. Whether it's through fiction or ritual or myth, stories are how we make sense of this crazy world and our place in it. They're the invisible threads that tie us to our past, our culture, and to ourselves. So, I'll leave you with this question to chew on. What's your story that got away? The book from when you were a kid? The movie you can only kind of remember? The tale someone told you once that's just on the tip of your tongue? What piece of your own story is out there just waiting for you to go find it again?